We are in Nashville, Tennessee for SEC Media Days. Georgia rolled into town today. I sat down with the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, Kirby Smart, and why waste any more time telling you what he said? Let's just show you our conversation with Kirby Smart from earlier today. Georgia head coach Kirby Smart is in Nashville, Tennessee for SEC Media Days. The most important question I've hit everyone with is vacation. Some of you guys believe in it, some of you don't. How much have you believed in it this year?
A lot. I believe in vacation and kind of getting your batteries recharged. I think it's important to do it. So I argue with my wife all the time about it because she wants to go out of the country, and I'm kind of a SEC footprint baby, so I don't like to leave the 5-hour radius of Athens, but she's like wanting to go to Italy somewhere, but we don't leave the country much.
They got cell phone service over there. You can get recruiting calls on the Amalfi Coast.
I don't know if I can get ice water. That's my problem.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
The small pleasures in life.
So a lot of folks have talked about you recently because you won back-to-back national championships, but then a whole bunch of the conversation has been off the field. You never dealt with that as a defensive coordinator.
Sure.
You're a head coach and you're a leader of a major program. And so from your perspective, what is it like managing a million different things, the least of which recently has seemed like it has anything to do with on the field?
It's part of it. I mean, I think the criticism and the kind of the cost of being a leader, you accept some of those things and that criticism, but to be honest with you, I worry about our team. And I've always focused on what's important now. I've always focused on control what you can control. And we got a great room of guys. We got a great group of coaches. We've retained our coaches after national championships, and it's pretty incredible how much we've kept our guys together. So I feel really good about what we have in our place.
Retention's a word we use a lot with roster, returning starters and whatnot, but you're talking about a staff there. And one of the hallmarks of successful programs is, they've constantly got coaching, overturn. And there's a lot of staff that we never even see that you've got churning inside your program. How valuable is that? When you got the same minds coming back from a successful organization last year, year before, and how much do you have to change the culture of your program to where it's conducive to folks wanting to come back year over year?
Yeah, I think retention is one of the number one things that indicates success. I mean, we've been really fortunate. I was looking today coming here, two of the kids we brought are Brock Bowers and Kamar Laster. They're in the COVID class. Well, the COVID class, if you remember, never went on an official visit, never really got recruited, and we got 17 of the 20 that we signed coming back. I would argue there's probably nobody in the country that has 17 out of 20 of their guys back in that class because it was a unique class. So the retention part, they want to be there, they want to be successful, they want to win, and that class has really been successful for us. But it's true in coaching too. We've got 26 people in our program that graduated from Georgia working at Georgia. So the amount of pride they take in that and performance, it's incredible, and they get a lot of buy-in that way.
What's the interview process for you like? When you're interviewing someone who, not from Georgia, hadn't worked in the SEC, you think they have the unique characteristics that it takes to work at Georgia, but you may not know them on that granular level. How hard do you have to hammer? And I'm not even talking about a coach. I'm talking about someone on a recruiting staff. I'm talking about player personnel. How deep do you have to dive before you're ready to check the box and say, that's my guy, that's my girl?
I want a lot of input, so I'm going to use my staff. We've got a valuable staff. We've got a large staff. I want people that know people. I want people that worked with them before. I would love to say that I've worked with them, but once you stay somewhere, as long as I've been at Georgia, that becomes hard because you haven't worked with enough people. So you use the people in your organization that have the ability to assess talent and also work ethic. And like, do we want to be around this person? Because we enjoy going to the office at our place. Our staff gets along great, and I'm big on relying on other people in the office to say, did you talk to them? Did you spend time with them? What did you think about them? Because you can go get talented people and bring them into your organization if you do it the right way.
Talk to me about this team a little bit. I know a lot of attention is going to be on Carson Beck today, but look past the quarterback position because everyone's talking about that. What are 2 or 3 of the focal points or maybe hinge points you're looking at saying that'll determine whether we're right back in Atlanta in December?
You start with the quarterback, which you did. I think outside of that, it's going to be a lot of the same things that always come up. Can we not give up explosive plays on defense, but yet still affect the quarterback? We lost some guys in Nolan and Jalen that really affected the quarterback. That's one of my major concerns is, can we get to the quarterback? Do we have elite pass rushers, or do we have to create it another kind of way and reinvent yourself? We got good defensive players, but I don't know if we got the guys on the edge and interior that we've had in the past. Offensively, with Coach Bobo coming in and taking over for Coach Munkin, we got a staff that's been intact. They know the weapons of the offense. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the quarterbacks? Because we got a different quarterback. That's one thing for sure. We're going to have a different quarterback, but we got some good players around them. So I'm excited to see what happens with those guys.
Now, let me tell you, one of the hardest laughs I've had is when Todd Monken gets a job elsewhere. You've known Mike Bobo for like 700 years, and folks who have never met him a day in their life were mildly critical in saying, why didn't he conduct a national search? Why did he just elevate from within? Plus, we've seen Mike Bobo before. We want something new. I'm delivering that to you just in case you don't subscribe to the paper these days. So when you listen to that kind of stuff, what's your reaction? Other than saying, shut up.
I love it because I'm like, it's the same crowd that when Mel Tucker left said, who's Dan Lanning? And same crowd that when Dan Lanning left, who's Glenn Schumann? And you know, when we hired Todd Monken, there's not a lot of people that just were abundant with joy with that hire. So each hire is going to be graded based on the results and the outcomes. And to me, it's really a more process related. I'm more thinking of like, who's going to do the best job with our staff, who understands our staff, who gives us continuity, who's called it before, who's coached quarterbacks before. It was a really good fit, and we brought him in with the thought that if Monken ever left, we would be comfortable.
I heard you talk recently on a podcast about how much more trust you're able to put in staff now than maybe you were when you first took over. You're a little more paranoid. You want your hands on everything. That's easy to say. It's far less easy to do when you're in charge with determining the outcome. How hard is it to start trusting folks and delegating and saying, I'm going to give you a responsibility, and if you fail in this, the whole thing's going to blow up, but I can't control it. It's on your plate now. How hard is that to do?
Well, it really has become much easier. I don't know if it's because my kids have gotten older. Like I had more time, idle time on my hands to have my hands in everything. You know, my kids are older. My kids are playing in sporting events. I want to be around my kids. I also have found that you retain coaches better when you empower them, and you give them growth, and you give them the ability to go be successful, and let them fail at what they may do, let them succeed at what they may do, but let them do it their own way without just doing it with ironclad fist.
Last question for you here. You're in the prime of your career. I don't know if you'll do this 30 more years, however long you do it though. Do you have a process for documenting what's happening? I don't even care if you write a book one day, just for you to look back on it personally. A lot of folks believe in journaling. A lot of folks realize I don't have time to journal. Do you document things, or do you just hope that memory is ironclad?
Yeah, I don't document things very well. I'm not a writer. I've never enjoyed my mother's English teacher, so she'll get mad at me about this, but I'm not a writer or a reader. I don't do that. I've got a lot in my memory bank, but no, I don't document it well.
Kirby Smart, head coach, University of Georgia. Appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate it, man.
Fan and myself, because a lot of you who are real ones who have been around the show for a while, you were here this time a year ago. And you remember things were a little bumpier between myself and Kirby Smart this time a year ago. And by that, I mean, we scheduled a conversation with him, and then I fell asleep in my hotel room the night before, tragically, and did not wake up in time the next morning because I didn't set my alarm clock. And so he shows up before the event is supposed to even go down, and his contingent wakes up early to come over to the hotel with him. I'm nowhere to be found. The crew's there. Kirby Smart, who's just won a national title 5 minutes ago and is about to go win one the next season, he's there, and I'm in my bed sleeping, just sound asleep. Anyway, I say that to remind you, because I told the story. Okay, I'm not perfect. I got flaws. I care too much. I invest too deeply in people, and sometimes I sleep in on the defending national champion head coach. I remembered it. The point is, I hoped he had forgotten. So after that interview's over, a lot of you always ask me, what do you guys talk about off the record? You talk to head coaches all the time. What's it like off the record? Well, I can't betray that confidence, except right now I'm going to. I talked to Kirby Smart in the hallway earlier today, and you see that face right there. If you're listening on podcast, just picture someone who knows they've gotten one over on you, and picture me with the most defeated posture imaginable. This is not chiropractor friendly, but he walked up to me and he said, I appreciate you showing up this year because you don't always do that. You remember that? You remember that from last year? He asked me if I remembered it. Yeah, I remembered it. So I thought that should be shared. Listen, he mentioned the word retention. I mentioned the word retention in a different context. He started talking about retaining players, retaining coaches, retaining people. That's the name of the game. I don't think people understand past the typical how many starters am I returning conversation. Retention takes a lot, okay? First off, he mentioned with coaches, you have the best chance to retain coaches by empowering them. In other words, giving them decision-making authority and empowering them, because guys a lot of times know that the perception on them is, I'm coaching under this great leader, but I'm really not making any calls. He does it all. And if that reputation gets out, all of a sudden people think you really aren't all you're cracked up to be. Well, if it gets out that Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or Ryan Day or whoever is entrusting that guy down there to make decisions, it empowers you and makes you want to stick around, but also it elevates your own personal stature and value a little bit more. The player retention is big. I talked to Cedric Van Pran today. That guy was on the fence about going to the NFL, coming back, and he comes back. And it's not to say that you're going to bat 100 and getting guys to come back, or bat 1,000, and getting guys to come back because you're running a good program. It just ups the percentage chance that you do. The third thing, though, and this is what I kind of honed in on. There are not very many elite programs out there, but there are some pretty good to really good programs out there with a few elite ones. Not all of them are destination programs. Not you would think so, but I'm telling you, the talk behind the scenes, program to program, differs. Some of them are viewed as more stepping stone jobs, not because they're lower in stature, but because the culture is not conducive to people wanting to stay there. And instead, people take the jobs at those particular programs, knowing if I go serve my time 1, 2, 3 years there, then I'll get a job at a place I actually want to be. That's not what Georgia is. And I don't know that it ever was the opposite. I just know from talking to enough folks around that program and listening to Kirby Smart talk that it is as conducive to people wanting to stay around today as it ever has been. Now, that's not necessarily baked into the cake when you're a defensive coordinator learning how to dial up zone blitzes. Like that's what he knew how to do better than anyone in the country when he was at Alabama. But being a leader and also fashioning your program in a way where it magnetizes in the pull fashion instead of the push fashion for the folks working inside the building, that is not taught in any classroom. You got to learn that the hard way. And the other thing that I took away from what you just listened to is he was talking about his team this upcoming year. They're going to be a consensus number one. Everyone's going to pick them to go to the playoff. A bunch of folks will pick them to win the national championship game. And I've been asked on a few hits I've done, is there any weakness on this team? Well, relative to Wyoming, no, there's not any weakness on the Georgia team. But relative to what it takes to win a national championship, is a question mark a weakness? I don't know about that. That's why it's a question mark. But he laid out one for you right there. If no one else wants to talk about it, getting to the quarterback, can they get to the quarterback? He said it's one of his biggest questions/concerns. I just want you to picture something. Let's say the answer to that question is very incomplete. Let's say data is incomplete earlier in the year. Let's say Georgia's beaten some teams just because they outmanned them, but you're watching and you're saying, South Carolina had a little bit more success through the air against us. Auburn had a little bit more success in perimeter runs than I thought they'd have. We won the game, but later in the year, in the playoff against Alabama or LSU in the SEC championship game, would that work? Well, I'm thinking about that, and I'm saying if you can't get to the quarterback and I see you go to Neyland late in the year, could that be where you get bitten? If you got a game where you know you need to hang 42 to win, do you have the quarterback to do it? I think the answer may be yes. I think the wide receiver core there, and I count Brock Bowers in that, and like the 14 other tight ends they have, I think the answer is yes. But I have seen too many seasons where we've entered with a consensus number one, and then all of a sudden we're asking what happened in late November to just write a national championship number 3 in Sharpie next to that Georgia logo. So that's not negativity, by the way. That's just realism. That's how sports actually work. We appreciate Kirby Smart joining the show, though.